Excel's going to be so exciting. All right, we are recorded. All right, hi guys, my name is Tori Quismondo. This is your very first Excel session where we are going to learn some of the tasks that you will use if you were to take the certification test. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you guys. And I'm going to share my entire screen. Okay. Which we know it always goes cuckoo for just a second. There we go. All right, so check this out. I'm currently sharing with you guys an Excel file, and I'm going to go over some of the tasks that I absolutely am 100% sure that the stuff that we go over today you will see as part of, or you will see the task on your Excel test. Before we hit up Excel and start going into tasks, I first want to go over the layout with you really quick. It has a standard layout just like Word has, with the tabs going across the top. File, Home, Insert, Draw, Page Layout, Formulas. So you might notice that some of them are titled different, but the format is still there. You still have the tabs that go across the top. You still have the groupings, clipboard grouping, font grouping, alignment grouping. So you still have these groups, number grouping. So it still has that same format. If you don't see what you need and you need the More button, here's the More button in the bottom of the groupings, right? So you can come to the More button and find what you might need in there. So as you're checking out those tips that I send you guys, it's still the same process. You're still going to, select the tab, go to the grouping, and find the button. All right. So another thing I want to share with you guys is this. This little area right here, if you can see where my mouse is, this is called your name box. And the name box will tell you what cell that you're in. If you guys don't know this, Excel is called the big grid. There are over 1 million rows and 1 million columns. The columns are identified, look across the top, with letters, column A, B, C, D, E, and it goes through the alphabet. If I were to continue to arrow over, it would duplicate the alphabet once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. This is a huge document. Excel is not just one small little thing that we use, here at Fateful Tech. This is used in big business. Like my sister and my mom, both of them work for Revlon, and Revlon takes Excel spreadsheets and uses it for their accounts. So this is a really big deal. I mean, this is a big file. If you look over here, on the left, I've got my rows are identified by numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I were to arrow down doing that, I would continue until I got more than 1 million. So this is a really large file. We use a very small piece of this. The cell that is outlined, that's considered your active cell. So if you hear me say, well, my active cell is SG289, then you can understand that. Now, up here in my name box, it tells me I'm in SG289. All right, now could I also click in that name box? For example, if it were to direct me to a specific cell, like maybe I needed to go to cell AA456. Okay, so if I put that in my name box and hit enter, it takes me to cell AA456. Now, that being said, at some point, we're going to address some naming conventions. You won't see a lot of naming conventions on the standard test. If you were to do the expert one, you would. But you can name areas. And if an area is named, you will see that here. So if I hit the down arrow on my name box, it tells me I've got date and total cost. Those are just named areas. I could come back up here and say that I wanted to go to cell A1. It doesn't have to be capitalized, and enter, and that will bring me back to cell A1, so I'm back to the top of my document. What if the directions were to tell me to go to the total cost area of the worksheet? Okay. Now, one thing that I could do is look on my worksheet down here and say, oh, okay, well, here's the total cost. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to select it, or what do you want me to do? So at that point, it could get confusing to you. So if you use this down arrow, if the instructions on the test tell you to go to a specific area, go to the date section of this worksheet. I can select it here, and it will take me to the date, and you'll see here the date is selected. Another positive thing about this is it selects all of it. All right. Sometimes when we go to select our range of cells, we may not select the header, the identifier. Or we might have trouble scrolling down and making sure that we get all of it. And depending on how much content is there, I mean, I'm already on, row 225. So I got to keep on scrolling till I select all of it. So when you have large areas like this, you will often have it identified already by the software, and it will tell you select the date. And you can come up here and choose that. Select the total cost, and you can choose that there. All right. So let me make sure and see if anyone's got any questions here. So any questions about the basic layout? This little name box here, this name box can take you to a cell, A1, enter. It can share ranges of cells with you if they are identified. Okay. Now, next to that, we've got over here, this little area here. This little X right here is going to be, to stop, or to delete something, to get rid of it. This little green check mark here is the same as hitting enter. And this little FX button here, this is your function, and I use that a lot. It's been with us ever since Excel started. If you've been a previous Excel user, you'll realize that this may come normal to you. If you have only started using Excel with 2010, this Formulas tab was invented, and you can pull the same things from this Formulas tab. Just like with any other Microsoft software, there are multiple ways to complete the task. In your testing, as long as you complete it how it states to complete it. If it doesn't give you a specific way to complete it, you can do it whatever way is easiest for you. So if I wanted to look up a function, I could select my FX button, and it brings me to my functions. It brings me to my categories here: financial, date and time, math and trig, which guess what are the same ones that are up here: financial, logical, text, date and time, math and trig. They're just in a little bit of a different order, but they're the same across the top as they are. And I actually am just preconditioned to go to this little FX button here instead of going to my Formulas tab. Okay? All right. So you guys realize Excel is not really about calculations, right? That Excel is actually about it's formulas. The biggest part of Excel is that you're going to go in and you're going to create some formulas in there, right? And it doesn't calculate numbers. Okay? So you don't have to, you're not going to think, like in Excel, I'm going to add, now you can do this, but I wouldn't recommend it. I'm going to add 7 and 7, all right? Oh, 7 equals 7, yes, that is true. I'm going to add 7 plus 7, all right, and enter, and that gives me 14. I would never encourage you guys to do that in Excel. It's just not, it just isn't, it doesn't make sense to do something like that, all right? Now, every formula that you guys are going to create, if you were asked to create a formula, and we're not getting deep into formulas today because I'm going to tell you, a huge portion of your test is creating, manipulating, managing, and organizing spreadsheets. More than probably about 3/4 of your test is based off of that. Only that last quarter of your test is going to be based on doing your formulas. So we're not going to jump too headstrong into formulas just yet. Today what we're going to do is we're going to hit up a lot of formatting, a lot of organizing, a lot of finding. All right? And Brooke says you can also just type the equal sign, and that's absolutely correct. Every formula must start with equals. It must start with equals. But if we were going to add things in Excel, if we were going to make a formula to add things, I would have 7 in a cell and 7 in a cell, and I would create my formula over here equals cell reference. It's about the cell references. Equals M3 plus N3, enter. Right? Then I get my 14. And why? Why would I worry about that? Well, good golly, if I had a million rows that had data in them, and I needed to update this 7 to an 8 because I made a mistake, it's going to update this total here for me. It's also going to update anything else that's connected. It's going to update my whole worksheet. It will update my whole workbook. Look down here at the bottom. Here's a sheet tab. Here's a sheet tab. Here's a sheet tab. All of these are sheet tabs going across the bottom. So I can connect multiple sheet tabs, multiple worksheets. I can connect all of those, and if I make one little change, it will change everything. And that's what Excel is about. So when you create your formulas, you want to always make sure, if it's possible, if it's on your sheet, that you use the cell reference. Now, sometimes the cell reference isn't there for you, okay? Sometimes whenever you need to make a calculation, the cell reference will not be on the page. If that's the case, you can type the number in, all right? But that will be the only time. If the cell reference is on the page, you always use the cell reference, okay? Let's look at a couple of these things that are here. I know that some of these things are on your test, so let's just go ahead and address some of these. What do you need? Oh, okay. All right, so let's check this out. Here, change the margins to 0.50 on the left, 0.50 on the right, and 0.75 on the top and bottom. All right, so let's just look at this. If we were to, I want to make sure that you guys know, you've done this before already in Word. It's not that much different. But let's take a look at this. If I go up here to my page layout and I look at my margins, I have my margins button. I can come down here to the bottom and set custom margins, because in this little area here, it tells me to also have a footer margin of 0.25. Okay, well, if I select my margins button, I don't see anything about a footer. So let's come in here to custom margins. Now, if that's not familiar enough to you and you're like, well, I don't see it here, you could do the more button. That's going to take you to the same place either way. All right, go under your margins tab. And now here I can adjust my top and bottom, you know, to whatever it tells me to. And I'm not going to complete all these tasks necessarily. I just want to make sure you know where it's at so you can get to it. If you can get to the spot, you can pass your test. So I'm making sure that you know how to get here. Also, it may ask you to center something on the page, either horizontally or vertically. That's where you get this here from. Here is your bottom margin down here at the bottom, your right margin, your top margin, and your left margin. Now, if it asks you to address your header or footer, here's your header and here's your footer area. Okay, so this one here says make your footer margin 0.25. If it's easier for you to type it, type 0.25, enter. Okay, and that will put the number in there. So however you prefer to do that. But you're going to see something on there about margins. You go into your margins and you can address it right there under your page setup box under your margins tab. Okay? All right. Now, let's look here at the next thing I want to address. Insert a left header that says confidential. Now, let's look at the rest of our screen. So I mentioned to you guys the tabs, I mentioned to you the ribbon, I mentioned to you the buttons are the same, and we mentioned the groups, right? Then we looked here at the name box. Then we looked at this. I skipped over this area here. This is your formula bar. I'm going to come back and address that in a little bit. But what I want to look at now is something that's at the very bottom. At the very bottom of my software on the right, I've got some views. This is my normal view. You see it where my mouse is here? On the bottom right. So next to that is my page layout view. And to the right of that is my page break preview. Okay, now if I prefer to use my view tab, it's going to give me the same thing, but that's one more click, and I try to use as few clicks as possible. So here's my normal view, my page break view, my page layout view, and I could create custom views, which you guys won't have to worry about. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my home tab, and I'm going to come down here on the bottom. I was originally on my normal view. The normal view is the default, right? Now check this out. Now that I've gone to a different view, I get this little dotted line here. That little dotted line just simply lets you know that that's where your page would stop. That's where your page ends. So that never comes up until you either go into a different view or until you print or do a print preview. Then you'll get that dotted line, and it lets you know, hey, that's where your page is going to end. And this here is where my next page would end. If I scroll down, I'll see one on the bottom, and that's going to share with me. Now, that's by default. It does that no matter what, you know, on Excel. So here's where my page ends here. But that's not where I'm headed with this. I want to head up into these headers, and I can't get those headers on my normal view. Now, could I do insert and header or a page layout? Let's do this. Page layout and header. I don't even use it this way, but it is up here on one of these. It's either under insert. Let's check it out. Insert header or page layout header. Let's see here, because I don't do it that way, but you can. If that's you, if that's how you do it, and I'm not seeing the button because I'm looking for it, but I don't do it that way. I come down here because it's one click, it's quick and easy. When you click on that page layout view, it's going to automatically share with you your different areas of your header. Okay? So if I look up here at the top, and I mentioned this to you guys in a tip, just above the first row, you're going to have 1, 2, 3 areas in your header. Okay, you always get 3 areas. That's the default. Okay, now if it simply asks you to type text in there like your name, okay, that's fine. Then it will tell you where to put it. In the header on the leftmost, on the left of your header, on the center in your header, or on the right in your header. It'll tell you where to identify with. All right. Now, let's say that in the center it asks you to put page numbers. All right. Now that I'm in my header, check this out. My header footer tools design tab is going to come up. And I could come up here and I could add my page numbers. Okay. Maybe it's going to tell me to add the date. If it says add the date, you want to always come up here and look and see if there's a button available for that. If I type the date in, it will not count it correct for me. So I'll come in here and enter the date, and it gives a formula and date. Okay, don't let that toss you off. It's Excel. Everything in Excel is about a formula. What if it says it wants the file name? If I look up here, my file name, see at the very top, here's my file name, Video 1 Excel. All right. If I type that in, it will be incorrect. If it asks me to place the file name, I will use the file name button. Okay. Does that make sense? So if it asks you to do a footer, you can scroll down and look at the footer that's down there. It'll be at the bottom of your page, or while you have your header open and selected, while you're there, it will ask you here under your design tab, do you want to switch over to your footer? Okay. And then I can add stuff to my footer down here. Go to my footer on here on page 1. And then the footer also is going to have 3 different options down there. You'll have your left, your center, and your right. And here at the top of this page here, I can see that my header is up there. All right. So that's the easiest way for you to do your headers and footers. Just remember, if it asks you to, if it says type classified into the leftmost header, then you're going to type. So you've got to read these questions that they give you, and one of the best things for you to do is for you to, I mean, you can read it out loud while you're there. No, I don't think that's going to, I haven't had multiple people that got upset while someone read their question out loud, but if it says to insert, that's kind of your key. If it says to insert a page number, or to insert a time, or to insert the file name, you'll know you're going to use these buttons up here. Okay? I'm going to go back to my normal view. Does anyone have a question about the headers and footers? Okay. Good deal. All right. Let me come back up here. I want to look at this. Insert a header that says confidential. Okay, we got headers. Do not display the salesperson's region on this worksheet. I've sent you guys a tip about this too, because you're going to see this on there. I want to go back to my normal view. I don't want to view my header up there. I like to work in this normal view here. Okay. All right. Navigate. Hold on. I lost my place because I got an email. Just do not display the salesperson's region on this worksheet. Okay. So if we look here, here is the region. The region is in column D. Now, it doesn't say hide column D. It doesn't say hide the region, but it says do not display, and so therefore it means hide. So that's why I'm saying when you guys go to take your test, most of the two people who have taken it, one person specifically said, I had a hard time kind of following some of the questions because it wasn't exactly how you had stated it. And so that's probably true because I'm trying to get you guys to understand the task. So when you read them, make sure that you read them very carefully. Do not display the salesperson's region. That means hide. Okay? I'm going to right click on my column and say hide. Now, I always think of this like the game Red Rover to pass through. I got to break through the hands. In order to unhide this, I have to ask C and E to release D. So I would have to select C and E, and then I can right click and say unhide. Now, if I only ask E to release it, it doesn't know what to release. If I only ask C to release and I say unhide, it doesn't know what to release. I have to ask both partners that are hiding it on each side, C and E, right click, and then I can say unhide. Now, I'm going to hide it back again. All right. And then I want to share with you guys that you can also, on your home tab in your sales grouping up here under your format button, you can select that and you can choose hide and unhide. And then it will ask you, do you want to hide things or unhide? And I can choose to unhide columns. If I had multiple columns hidden, it would ask me what I wanted specifically. It would list it. Okay, but I only had one, so I selected just that one because that's my only option that I had. Now I can hide rows just the same. Right click on it, hide. I ask 7 and 9 to release 8. Right click and unhide. Okay, if I wanted to hide row 8, I can also come up here, Home tab, Sales Grouping, Format button, hide and unhide. Unhide rows, since I only have one row hidden, it will only release the one that's hidden. Okay? So any questions about hiding and unhiding? Okay? All right. The next thing I want to make sure to discuss with you guys is here, configure the worksheet to always display rows 1 through 11 in column B. Okay, this task does not say freeze panes on these particular cells. All right, but that's what it is. That's what it's telling you, to freeze the panes. Now, what's freezing the panes? So check this out. If I'm going through this document here, and I need to get to like row 305, and I look and I say, okay, well, oh gosh, what was this column titled? I don't know what that column, and what's this column? That column is either. If I look here and I don't know what these columns titles are, I would want to freeze that pane, because by freezing that, it shows on my screen we got disconnected for just a second. There we go. So by freezing the pane, it will allow me to keep my titles up there. Now, this specific one says, configure the worksheet to always display rows 1 through 11. So I always want to see rows 1 through 11. Now, I'm going to tell you the I'm going to reshare my screen. Hold on just a second. Yeah, I don't know if you guys are seeing the screen. I don't know if it's on my end or your end, but it looks like we lost connection for just a second. So let me come back in here and reshare the screen for just a second. Yeah, it's reconnecting. Okay. Okay, I think we're back. All right, I think we're back now. Finally, it took a minute. Anyways, we were on this part here that was configure the worksheet so you always display rows 1 through 11 and column B. And what I was trying to tell you guys just as we were getting disconnected is that, oh, let me make sure we got re-recorded again. Sorry. Are we still recording? Okay, yeah, we're still recording. Okay, good. All right, so here I was trying to tell you how to freeze panes. When you freeze panes, you always go one row below and one to the right. So if it tells you to freeze or to configure the worksheet so that you always display rows 1 through 11, you're going to make sure, you're going to know that row 12 is the one that's going to need to be configured. It also tells us here that we also want to display column B. So if that's the case, if that means A is going to be displayed, and it says to make sure to display column B, so I would go to row 12, column C, and I would select that cell, that one cell, because it's going to freeze everything to the left and above. Everything to the left and above will be frozen. All right, so I can come up and I can go to my View tab, choose my Freeze Panes, and I can just tell it to freeze the panes. Now, if it were to ask you to make sure that the first column is always viewed, you could just select freeze first column. If it says that make sure you can always view the top row, okay, well, that's viewing your top row. But this here, if it gives you a specific area, it will freeze everything to the left and above the cell you selected. So now I can see these little lines have kind of come up here. And what that does is it lets me know that that's my frozen cell. Now as I scroll down, I will always see, no matter if I'm at row 10, 110, 157, I'll still see salesperson over here. I'll still see that this is a product, that this is the region. So that's called freeze panes. Okay? Does anyone have any questions about freezing panes? Awesome. Now, if you were a user of Excel prior to 2010, good. Okay, thanks, Brooke. If you were a user prior to 2010, or even I think a 2010 and previous, when you open Excel, you only get one sheet tab now, right? So most of us are using Office 365, which is the same as Office 2016, which means that when you open Excel, you only get one sheet tab at the bottom. All right. Now, if you have an older software, then you're getting 3 sheet tabs at the bottom because that used to be the default. Okay. So let me hide that so I can come over here. This little plus them up at the bottom, this gives you a new sheet tab. So if it were to ask you to add a new sheet tab, you could come over here. I call it the plus them up. You plus it up, you add a new. No matter what, if you don't have a sheet 1 out there, it's going to default it as a sheet 1. To rename it, you simply right click on it or double click. If I double click, I can start typing. All right. Or if I right click, I can say rename. It'll select that. Once I'm done, I've got to click away. So I'll click up into my sheet. All right, that's called class. If I were asked to put some color on that, Okay, I would right click and choose my tab color and select the color that it tells me. Let's say it tells me to apply purple color to the class sheet tab. So I'll right click and I'll choose my tab color. Now, it doesn't look purple, but don't let that fool you, because it's never going to look its full color until you click away onto another sheet tab. Now this one looks more purple because I've clicked away and gone to another one. Okay? So if you're trying to manage a workbook, because a workbook is all of these worksheets or sheet tabs within your file. So Excel is very different from Word, because in Word you've got one document that keeps going on and on for more pages. But Excel, this one sheet can have many, many, many quote pages, but then you can add a bunch of sheet tabs, and so then it's more like a workbook, and it's called a workbook. Okay? Now, if I wanted to move a sheet tab, I would just simply click and hold, and you see that little arrow that comes up above it, and drag, and I can move this sheet tab to a different location. All right, if I wanted to move disclaimer, click and hold and hold and drag until the arrow gets where I want it, and drop, and now that sheet tab will move. And notice as disclaimer is selected, it does not look red, but once I click away, it is a red sheet tab. Okay? All right. So far, I think we've gone over just some of the very, very basics. Let's take a look here. I'm going to click here on Project 1. There's a couple of things that I want to address on this sheet tab here. This one here says the beginning in cell B14, import the tab file named Customer List. Now, I want to make sure to address this in Word. In Word, when we would add text from another file, it was insert and object. Insert and object. Now, here, if I go to my Insert tab and I'm still thinking on the same way that I did in Word, and I'm looking for an object, all right, I can get this text box right here, and then it's going to ask me the text box, header and footer, and you're thinking, well, now, here is object, but I'm going to tell you this is going to be embedded, which is different, okay? So, in Excel, if you're trying to import from another file, you're going to want customer TXT into cell B14. So I'll select B14 first, okay? And then the next thing I'm going to do is come up here on my Data tab. In my Get and Transform Data, I'm going to use the Get Data button. And I'm going to say that it's from a file. And it says that it's from a text file. And I have this customer list saved on my desktop. Oh, sometimes this online meeting software does not like it when you do that. Okay. Yeah, it's booted me out. Oh, there it finally came back. Okay. I have it saved on my desktop as my customer list, and then I say import. So, I see someone outside. I'm so sorry. You know, I do this from home. All right. So check this out. This list on here, or this import for you guys, is important because in Word, you would do insert an object, okay? In Excel, you're going to say you're going to get data. Now, it's going to ask you here, what's your file origin, okay? We've got my file origin. In the instructions, it said it was tab delimited, okay? And then if it were to tell you to base it off of specific areas, you could base it off of that. This one doesn't have, I don't have to worry about that. I can go ahead and add this in, and it will add that list in. Okay, it's running kind of slow because this Collaborate software doesn't like it when I try to import and add other things like that. If you have a Linda account, yeah, it didn't like me doing that. If you have a Linda account, this is in the Linda account, and you want to make sure that you can do that step, all right, that you can pull that data from another location, all right. Rename a sheet tab, okay, that's simple. If I right click on it, I can rename a sheet tab. If you right click, you can also delete a sheet tab. You're going to have to do something with sheet tabs. It will either ask you delete a sheet tab, move a sheet tab, rename, name, add tab color, hide, or unhide. You're going to have to work with sheet tabs. One of your questions will ask you one of these items here. If I want to rename it, right click rename and start to type, and then click above into your file, okay? All right. Here, modify the print settings so that all columns fit on one page. You will have a question on your test about printing, okay? Oh, let me do this one. Configure the worksheet to repeat the column headings on each page, okay? You're going to have something to do with printing. You'll have one question at least to do with printing. You'll have one question at least to do with tabs. You'll have one question at least that's going to deal with your margins and layout, okay? And you'll have probably one question about headers or footers. And so I wanted to make sure to hit all of these up today. Here, configure the 2016 customers worksheet to repeat the column headings on row 14 so that they're printed on each page. Now, if you guys, let me find another area where I could do that with. Let's come over here. For example, in this listing here, okay, this listing here, if I were to ask to make it where I could view it, that I could view row 1 all the time, or view rows 1 and 2 all the time, that would be my freeze pane, right? That'd be my freeze pane. So I could come here, and if it was about viewing, I could say view and freeze panes and freeze them from where I'm at. And then when I scroll down, I always have my headers up there. But what about printing? Okay, that doesn't help me when I print. So if you're trying to take a logical standpoint on this, or you know, if you use Excel and sometimes you're like, well, I really hate that when I print my, you know, grade books from my students and I get to the second page, I never have the headings at the top. Okay, so when you go in, you can do it from your page layout, all right, or you can do it from file and print. If you select your more button, okay, you can go in and do it this way here from your print preview and your options. But guess what? This little area here, this button here, which is fairly new if you're an old Excel user, this wasn't here in previous version, this is your print titles. Choose the rows and columns you'd like to repeat on the printed page, which is the same thing as doing freeze pane, but now you're doing it for your printing. Now, it's going to ask me for rows to repeat at the top. This is what it's asking me for. I want here rows 1 and 2 to repeat at the top. Then I can go into print preview and double check it if I want to. All right, well, there's my first page. I want to go to my second page and make sure I've got the headings at the top. Now I'm on page 2 and page 3. They all have the headings on the top. So this is a quick and easy button for that. If you're old school, you've done this before, you can come into your page layout, go to your more, select your sheet tab, rows to repeat at top. Okay, you can also do this from your print preview. All right, so this is the same thing as freeze panes, but only this deals with your printing, all right, and not necessarily with just your view. All right, so the next thing I want to share with you guys is if it were to ask you to make sure to print every column, okay? And I'll show you the other way to get in there. If you choose File and Print, File and Print, and you use this page setup right here, this will get you to where we just were, and you go to your Sheet tab, and you can select rows to repeat at the top, okay? Now, in this particular instance here, this is the tip I sent out to you guys today. What if it tells you to print all of your rows on one page, which if we did it on this one, the rows will be really, really small. What if it tells you to print all of your columns on one page? So that's a little bit different. So we'll go into File and choose Print. Under the Print here, it gives me my different settings. Do I want to print the active sheet? You're going to have a question about printing. Now, what it's going to ask you, I don't really know because not everyone gets the same question. Maybe you'll have a simple one where it just says, print the active sheet. And you can come in here and say, print my active sheet. It may say, print only a selection. All right? And then you can choose your selection. If it tells you to do that, it will have different areas that you can select from, or it will tell you this page to that page. Okay? It might tell you under here for scaling. It might say fit all the rows on one page. Now it's going to be really tiny, but it'll do it on here because we've got a lot of rows. All right? Or it might tell you to fit all columns or fit the whole sheet on one page. Okay? So that's where you're going to find these settings here. So if you have a question about printing, try your Page Layout tab. Go to your Page Setup grouping. If you don't see it there, go to your More button. If it's not on your page or your Sheet tab, then I would encourage you to go back over to your File and Print, and anything else that you need will be there. Okay? All right, are there any questions about printing? Okie doke. All right. Okay, so we hit up everything that was on there. There are a couple more things I want to address with you guys today really quick. On this sheet tab, I'm going a little bit over my time, but I don't have to be a bus driver today since the public school is out. So I want to give you guys just a few more minutes of things. On this sheet here, navigate to the total cost range and format it to currency. This is exactly what I was telling you guys about before. Navigate to the total cost range. If I come down here and select total cost, will that be okay? Sure, it will. It will be. But what it's telling you is to go to your naming area and select total cost. And then it says change the formatting to currency. On my Home tab, in my Numbers grouping, that's where I can change everything back. Now, this dollar sign is accounting. It is not currency. There is a difference, okay? If you don't see here what you need, you can select this down arrow and choose. I need currency. Currency does give it a different format than accounting, so don't count yourself short. If it says apply currency formatting, make sure that's what you choose. Okay? Now we've applied that formatting, although you can't see it because the cells are too small. You know, anytime in Excel, when your cell is too small for the numbers, it does not show you the numbers at all. And why is that? Well, let's think about this for a second. If I had 7,000 in a cell, but the cell was small and it only showed me 70, not 7,000, that's a big difference. And I could go through my whole file, my whole project, and think that number was 70 and never know that it was 7,000. I might think my calculations are wrong because all I see in that cell is 70 instead of the 7,000. All right? So if I make this column smaller, what will happen is the bigger number goes into the number symbol. And that just simply is like, all right, well, I've got to increase my column width in order to see this whole thing. All right? The easiest and best way, and you may have this on your test, it might ask you to AutoFit columns A through I. Okay, select columns A through I. AutoFit is exactly like it sounds. It is a double click, AutoFit, double click, AutoFit, double click, AutoFit. AutoFit will increase your column width to the largest size of anything that's in the cell. The largest cell of that column will give it its column width. So what I did is I selected all of the columns and I went in between I and J and double clicked AutoFit. Okay, now if I don't like that format, if I don't want to do it that way, I can go to my Home tab, my cells grouping, my format button, and I can tell it to AutoFit column width. This is also the area where I can adjust the row height or the column width separately. If it were to tell me to adjust column I so that it's 25 points, I can click here and drag it to 25. If I'm not steady with my mouse and I don't like select format and then choose my column width and type 20. Okay. Either way will work. Same thing with a row. I can increase the height of a row by dragging, and you will see the pixels will be identified there. If I'm not steady with that, I select my row, Home tab, Cells grouping, Format button, row height, and then I can type it in, 25. Okay? All right. So let's see here. Another thing I want to mention to you guys before we head out of here today is if I were to type a word into a column, into a cell, let me see my name right here. But down here, I'm going to type a number. Notice that line. Now, can I come back in here and change the alignment to either center or right? Absolutely. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change a thing. But when it's initially typed in, if it is text, it aligns left. If it's numbers, it aligns right. And what that tells Excel is it gives Excel, oh, hey, this is a number, I can calculate this. Okay? So that means this can be calculated, but Tori cannot. I can never put Tori into a formula that means absolutely nothing. I have to have something that can be calculated, in which case would be this. Now, can you name areas? You absolutely can. For example, over here, this is called total cost. This is called customer list. And I could use that in formulas, absolutely. But that is a specific cell that's been named. That's not text within a cell, and there's a difference between that. All right, a few more things before we head out of here today. One of them is this. Did you know that you can add and subtract in Excel for dates? Okay, and this is not on the sheet for today, but I want to share this with you. So let's say that this class ends July 29th. I don't remember when it ends, but let's pretend it ends July 29th, 2018. This up here is called my formula bar. Okay, and in my formula bar, it will share with me if I have a formula, or it will share with me if I've got text. So in this particular cell here, if I go up here, my formula bar, it says Tori, right? But in this particular cell here, it says all of this text because that's what's within that cell. So whatever is in your cell. Now, if you have a formula, it'll share with you the formula. We don't have a formula created just yet, but there's a formula here in cell I-12. So if I look here in cell I-12, I don't get the $7.99 in my formula. It shares with me my formulas. Okay, I'm not going deep into formulas today. I'm going to give you guys a taste of it because next week is when we're going to hit those up. And then after that, you should feel very comfortable to go and take your Excel test. Okay, so here I'm going to say that this class ends on July 9th. there's a difference in these formats in the way that I type them in. If I wanted them to be consistent on the home tab and the number grouping, this is where you're going to identify all your different numbers formatting or text formatting. I could move this back to a standard text if I wanted to. I can make it a short date, a long date. All right, so I can change and update these and make them the same format, which would be nice. They'll still calculate whether you've got them short or long. All right, and in either format, doesn't matter what format it is, it'll still calculate. And then if I were to say days left, I could put a formula here. All formulas start with equals, okay? And I'm going to say I would like to subtract cell M9, which is today, from cell L9, which is the end of the class. Oh, I did it backwards. Hold on. I'm going to say equals to start off my formula. Take the day the class ends. There we go. Minus today's date. We've got 45 days left of the class if this were, you know, when the class ended. Okay? There's 45 days in between there. Now, if I click here on cell N9 and look up at my formula bar, it doesn't tell me 45, it gives me the formula. Another really quick way for you, and I like some of these shortcuts, some of them I don't, a quick way for you to view the formulas, you can hold down Control. I tell my students make the letter L with your left hand. Your thumb and your index finger are the two things that are going to, the two fingers that are going to be used. Your thumb goes on Control, your index finger goes on tilde. Control tilde is your viewing area to view all of your formulas. When my students turn in Excel, the first thing I do is go in and view the formulas. I want to see all the formulas. Control tilde will bring you back. If you don't like that process, you can go under View, Tab. Now, you can go under Formulas tab. Sorry, I don't ever use it this way. Formulas tab, and under your formula auditing, you can say Show Formulas, and you can click it again. It will take you back. You never work in that formula area, but it's nice for you to see all the formulas and see where they are so you can check things out. Next week, we're going to start into a little bit more with formulas. We're going to learn a little bit about this thing called the fill handle, which I will rename it as the Skinny Mini because it is. That little Skinny Mini is really great because what it will do is it will allow you to fill things in, whether it's a formula or whether it's a list. There are pre-created lists in Excel in case you've never done this before. Let's say that you had 5 tests. If I type in there test 1 and get my fill handle and drag it along, it'll say test 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? If I type in Jan or January, right, and I get my fill handle and drag it around, it's going to give me the months. And it will both vertical and horizontal. So what's the trick with this little thing called the fill handle? Well, notice when you let me make sure. Is anyone having trouble seeing this? Are we back? I think it's back. Let me reshare my screen again, just in case. Oh, Brooke says she's back. Okay, so you can see it now? Can you see the screen? No, I don't think I can hear. We see you? Oh, but just you. I need to reshare. Okay, let me reshare the application again. It's lost it. I don't know what's going on with our internet today. Yeah, you don't want to see me. You want to see this. Let's say stop sharing and try it again. How about now? Maybe that was just our sign to stop for today, but I wanted to share with you the fill handle before we left today. Okay. Well, maybe that's where um it looks as though, yeah, it looks like it's sharing. Okay. Well, we'll call that an end to our session. Okay, so you guys can still see me. Let me stop the recording then. And